What's up, guys? Welcome back to DCA. So what we're going to do in this video is take a look at a potential transition shift in the cryptocurrency market. So what we're looking at here is the Ethereum chart with relation to Bitcoin. Ethereum has essentially been gaining ground with relation to the Bitcoin market cap ever since all the way back here in September of 2019. So Ethereum went on a big run in its first bull market, which was the 2016 into essentially the early 2018 market cycle, when we got, north of $1,000 for the first time for Ethereum. And since that time, ever since, the bull market led into that massive crash that we saw where Ethereum at points was back under $100, we have seen that Ethereum has constantly been gaining momentum. Okay. So what we see is that Ethereum has adhered quite strictly to this upwards trend that we've seen that started back here in September of 2019. So we'll get above this level, and then we need to correct back down and come back to this trend line. And we've seen this numerous times now. So you saw it multiple times in 2019. Then you saw it again after the COVID capitulation event back here in March and into April of 2020. And then yet again, right as the bull market was getting kicked off. So if you'll recall at this time, Ethereum had gone on a run in the middle of 2020, but then it needed to correct again. And what was the reason for that? Well, if we just look at the chart for Bitcoin here, you'll notice that Bitcoin went on a huge run at this time, right? So Bitcoin went in, we're looking in December here. It went up a huge amount in November and December. So we went from around 15,000 bucks to, in the early parts of January up to around $32,000. So you have to remember, when we look at this chart, we aren't looking at the price of Ethereum. We're looking at the value of Ethereum with respect to Bitcoin. So when we see a correction here, these assets could both potentially be going up, but it just indicates that if this is moving down, that indicates that Bitcoin is simply, retaining more value or gaining more value in relation to Ethereum. Conversely, when it's moving up, we're seeing Ethereum gaining more value or holding its value better than Bitcoin. And so, as we said, we've moved along this trend line. And then right here in March is kind of when Ethereum moved into a new stratosphere. So it kind of went from this zone here where the value of Ethereum was anywhere from 10% up to around 25% that of Bitcoin. But then it really went up to this next level and has maintained this level. And that's important here. It has maintained this value with relation to Bitcoin ever since that bull run that came to an end kind of in May of 2021. You'll notice that since this time, we've now been forming a new trend within our overarching trend. So we have this long winding uptrend that we've been forming all the way since 2019. But then we've been forming this new channel here. Okay, so this ranges anywhere from around 34% up to around 50% the value of Bitcoin. And you'll notice one important thing here, and that is this. You see that every time that Ethereum gets up to this approximately 50% value with relation to Bitcoin, what happens? We see a large shift back towards Bitcoin being the more valued asset. And if we just look at the times that this has occurred, it happened in May and it happened in December. It happened again in the end of March into the beginning of April. And we're right there again now. So what is the key factor or similarity between these three zones here? So we're talking May of 2021, we're talking December of 2021, and we're talking April and March of 2021. What is the key similarity? So if we just look at these events, right? So we have May, we have December, and then we have March and April. The key similarity in each of these events is that these have been kind of spikes in the market that have resulted in impending crashes. That's something that we need to consider from where we're sitting right now. Is this point that we're sitting at, is this just a level where we're going to see that Ethereum gets up to this zone, it gets up to this valuation against Bitcoin of around 50%, and then we see a larger market crash? Is there potential for that? We're going to look at a few scenarios today, but I think one thing that you have to at least admit is that we've been in this downtrend ever since here in November and December of 2021. You have to imagine that if we've been in this long winding downtrend, we are not out of the woods necessarily yet. I mean, there's still a lot of inflationary issues in the economy. You're still going to have the Fed pursuing a policy of quantitative tightening. You're still going to have a lot of the supply chain issues. You still have the issues with Ukraine and Russia. So there are numerous factors influencing the market right now that you need to at least consider. And when we take a look at this and consider the evidence that every time Ethereum gets up to this level, we see a large correction in the market. I mean, if you just look, May, December, April, every single time there has been a large correction. In fact, if we just measure these moves, each instance where Ethereum has got up to this 50% valuation against Bitcoin, we have seen a 50, a 50, and a 65% drop in the total cryptocurrency market. So that's sort of the bearish case and the bearish bias in the market right now. Now, let's look at this in a different way, though, and consider the possibility that when we look at the fact that we've seen Ethereum knock on the door of this 50% level, 1, 2, 3, 4, and perhaps 5 times now. And what does that mean? That means that, I think that when you see something, it moves up to a resistance level and gets rejected, moves up and gets rejected, moves up and gets rejected so consistently, like we're seeing for Ethereum. I think that it's only a matter of time before we see Ethereum break above this resistance level and kind of move into that next stratosphere when things like the flippening start to become realistic possibilities. So what we're going to do is take a look at Bitcoin in relation to Ethereum now. What we have here is the Bitcoin dominance versus the Ethereum dominance charts. What we're looking at here, and when we say dominance, we're talking about dominance with relation to the entire cryptocurrency market. We're not comparing Bitcoin directly to Ethereum here. We're looking at what percent of the market, the total market, is comprised of Bitcoin and what percent of the market is comprised of Ethereum. And so you can see right now, Bitcoin's dominance is around 40%, whereas Ethereum's is around 20%. And what we can say here is the fact that Bitcoin has over time been losing dominance. And that just makes sense. I think it's very natural for that to occur because of the fact that Bitcoin for a long time was pretty much the only game in town. But now that there's Ethereum and a lot of these other layer ones and, lots of layer twos and then apps being built on these various networks, there's more value being created in the market than just Bitcoin. Okay, so what we see is that, and this is rather interesting. And I think that this really speaks a lot to the strength of Ethereum. Because while Bitcoin has been losing total market cap dominance, and in fact, if you just look, ever since June here, Bitcoin has went from around 47% all the way down to around 41%. Whereas during this same time, Ethereum has went from around 14% or 15% all the way up to around 21%, right? So you're seeing that Ethereum, in spite of there being numerous new competitors in the market, Ethereum is consistently gaining market cap. And let's just talk about why that is for a moment. And for a second here, we're going to ignore Bitcoin. We're just going to talk about Ethereum. So if we talk about Ethereum, let's bring in this chart right here. So what we're looking at is the Ethereum layer 1 protocol revenue. And what you can see, and this is rather easy to understand here, and the reasons why this matters are very easy just to conceptualize by looking at this. All of the layer ones combined don't even equal 10% of the revenue generated by Ethereum. So Ethereum is generating revenue at a rate such that it's absolutely crushing to all of the other networks. So, when we see that Ethereum is gaining dominance against the rest of the market, especially as we have the merge coming up in September, I think it's very clear that, this is the reason that the market and that investors are valuing Ethereum in such a way. And if we just look here, we are in that very similar uptrend against the entire market with Ethereum. We're in this uptrend and then we're forming a secondary uptrend against the entire market. So every time that we get into this 20 to 22.5 or so range, that's kind of where we get rejected. And it's kind of happened at the same places. May, right here in November, you also had a point here in August, which, we did have a correction in August. And you saw it again here in March and April. So we're sitting at this point for Ethereum right now where we've seen a major market correction every single time we've got into this level. But remember, Resistance levels, as you hit them and hit them and hit them and hit them again, you can only be corrected so many times before you finally break through that level. And so that brings me to my final point that I want to get to today. So at some point, what I suspect is going to happen and what we're going to see is that Ethereum, maybe we get rejected this time. And then, I think at some point, though, at some point, not in the very distant future, we're going to see Ethereum kind of move up to this 30% level. And I think that what you may see is Bitcoin eventually breaks down below this level. And this is going to happen when Bitcoin breaks below. It's probably going to happen in a bullish segment of the market, because what you see is that when we're into a bull market, there's a lot of speculation and people start to move into some of these other assets with much smaller market caps and that have much more speculative use cases. So as we come into a consistent bull portion of the market, I think you're going to see Bitcoin start to move down this way. And if Ethereum is able to keep its protocol revenue dominance going into the next cycle, I think that you're going to see Ethereum start to move up this way. So I think that we're really right now seeing perhaps the very beginnings of the things that need to happen in order to see Ethereum start to move on Bitcoin and start to replace its dominance. So that gives us a lot to consider here, because we just talked about some things that have some long-term ramifications, as well as some factors going on in the market right now that have a strong potential to influence the market in the short term. So let's just quickly talk about what may happen right now based on what we're seeing, rather than looking down the road. I think what's going to happen here is there's a lot of potential that as we lead into the merge, as we start moving closer to the merge, I think you could potentially see that Ethereum does in fact get above this resistance level. All right. So as we move into, as we're moving into September, so Ethereum potentially gets above this resistance level. And then what really would signal to me that the market is positioning Ethereum to replace Bitcoin as the largest asset would be something like we get above this resistance level. So we get above, and then as we see a correction in October, we kind of come back down to this level and hold it as support rather than using it as a resistance level. So that's kind of something that I'm potentially thinking about. The market could play out like that going from September into October. There's a lot of reasons to believe that Ethereum is being valued in a new way now, but there's also a lot of potential that, we've seen Ethereum come up to this level, and that has led to a large market correction in multiple cases now. So, we have to see what happens. And I would at least, keep a high level of suspicion that we see a large correction off of this level. So it's definitely something to watch. But if we see Ethereum break above this level and really start to run, I think eventually you are going to see a correction and it ultimately comes back down to this level. But a very bullish sign for Ethereum would be coming back down to this level, holding it as support, and then making this the new dynamic for Ethereum. So that's going to be it for this one, guys. If you guys like this type of content, hit like and subscribe. And until next time, as usual, see you.